The void of space stretched infinite, a vast canvas of black, speckled with unblinking stars. The Dauntless, a sleek human flagship bristling with weaponry and armor, cut through the darkness like a predator on the hunt. Its crew, over 1,000 strong, worked with clockwork precision. The air on the bridge was tense, charged with an energy that made every breath feel heavier. "Captain, anomaly dead ahead," reported Lieutenant Mira Saren, her voice sharp as a blade. She leaned over her console, emerald eyes scanning the glowing readouts. The faint glow from her screen lit her angular face, which was locked in concentration. "Unidentified fleet, bearing 045, 12,000 kilometers out." Captain Elias Vero stood at the command dais, his uniform crisp, but his face weathered by years of combat. A streak of silver cut through his dark hair, and his storm-gray eyes flicked to the tactical display. A formation of crimson blips lit up the hologram, their sheer numbers dwarfing the handful of blue icons representing the human fleet. "That's too many for a routine patrol," Vero muttered. His voice was calm, but there was a weight to it that silenced the murmurs across the bridge. "Magnify. I want visuals." The hologram dissolved, replaced by a grainy feed from long-range optics. What appeared on the screen sucked the air from the room. A fleet unlike anything they had ever encountered loomed ahead. Jagged organic vessels pulsated with a sickly bioluminescent glow, their surfaces crawling with writhing tendrils. The largest of them dwarfed the Dauntless, bristling with weapons that glowed faintly, as if alive. "Holy hell," whispered Ensign Grady, a young communications officer. "That's not a fleet, that's a damn armada." "Focus!" snapped Mira, shooting him a glare. Vero ignored the exchange, his gaze fixed on the screen. "Comms, open a channel. Priority 1. "Aye, Captain." Grady fumbled slightly, but patched through. "Channel open, sir." Vero straightened, his voice cutting through the tension. "Unidentified vessels. This is Captain Elias Vero of the United Sol Alliance ship Dauntless. You have entered human-controlled space. Identify yourselves or explain your intentions. Failure to comply will be seen as an act of aggression." Silence. Only the hum of the ship's systems and the faint murmur of crew chatter filled the void. Seconds stretched into a minute, then 2. "Captain," Mira said softly. No response. "They're scanning us. Their energy signatures are spiking." "Contact!" barked Commander Brax Tyrell, the tactical officer. His gravelly voice was like a gunshot in the quiet. "They're locking weapons! Shields to maximum!" Vero shouted. "All hands! Battle stations! I want every gun hot and ready!" The alarm blared across the ship, a deep, bone-rattling klaxon that sent crew members sprinting to their posts. On the tactical display, the alien fleet surged forward, a wall of dark death blotting out the stars. "Incoming fire!" Mira yelled, her voice breaking through the chaos. The ship rocked violently as a searing beam of energy sliced past, narrowly missing the Dauntless. Another beam struck a smaller frigate in the fleet, tearing through it like paper. The explosion lit up the darkness, casting an eerie red glow over the bridge. "Return fire!" Vero commanded. The Dauntless roared to life, its forward cannons spitting bolts of brilliant blue plasma. Nearby human vessels joined in, their weapons lighting up the void in a dazzling display of defiance. The alien fleet absorbed the barrage, their strange, writhing hulls rippling with energy shields. "We're outgunned," Brax growled, his hands gripping the edge of the console. "These things are built for annihilation." Vero clenched his jaw. "Then we fight smart. Mira, options?" Running simulations now, she replied, fingers flying over her console. Her voice was steady, but sweat beaded on her brow. Their formation is tight, too tight. If we can bait them into spreading out, they'll isolate their ships. Vero finished, his mind already working ahead. Right. Helm, prepare for evasive maneuvers. Tactical, prioritize their smaller vessels. Anything to thin their numbers. As the Dauntless twisted and weaved through the chaos, its guns blazing, the bridge was a storm of controlled panic. Sparks flew as a console exploded behind them, and smoke began to fill the air. A junior officer screamed as medics rushed to pull her out. "Shields at 62%!" Mira called out. "Another direct hit and we'll lose aft coverage!" Vero stepped forward, his voice rising above the cacophony. "We're not losing this ship! Focus fire on their lead cruiser! Bring me options, people!" The alien fleet pressed harder, their unrelenting assault pounding the human ships. One by one, smaller vessels in Vero's fleet were reduced to fireballs in the void. The Dauntless was all that stood between the alien onslaught and humanity's nearby colonies. A chilling voice echoed through the comms, deep, guttural, and laced with malice. The Kryzeth had answered at last. "Humans," the voice growled, distorted but unmistakably alien. "Your existence is a stain upon this galaxy. Prepare for extinction." Vero's lips pressed into a thin line. "Extinction. Not today," he muttered under his breath. "Captain!" Mira shouted. "More ships inbound! Unknown class!" Vero's gaze snapped to the tactical display. A second wave of alien ships was emerging from hyperspace. The odds were becoming insurmountable. He took a deep breath, steeling himself. "All ships, retreat to Rally Point Sigma. I'll cover our escape." "Sir, that's suicide!" Brax argued. "Do it!" Vero barked. "Mira, plot an escape route for the fleet. Everyone else, prepare for close combat. We're not going down without a fight." As the human fleet began to withdraw, the Dauntless charged headfirst into the alien formation, guns blazing, a lone spark of defiance against the overwhelming darkness. The Dauntless limped through the inky void, its hull scarred and blackened from the brutal skirmish. Fires had been extinguished, but the ship's corridors were filled with acrid smoke and the faint tang of ozone. The bridge was quieter now, the adrenaline of combat replaced by a grim resolve. Captain Elias Vero leaned against the command dais, staring at the tactical display. The human fleet had been scattered, their losses catastrophic. Only a handful of ships remained, clinging to the Dauntless like pilot fish to a wounded shark. "Status report," he said, his voice hoarse. Lieutenant Mira Saren glanced up from her console, exhaustion etched into her sharp features. "Shields are down to 14%. Weapon systems are partially operational, but our long-range cannons are offline. Casualties, over 200 confirmed dead, 300 more injured." She hesitated before adding, "The Resolute and Horizon are gone." The loss hit Vero like a hammer. Damn it. He rubbed a hand over his face, then straightened. "What about the fleet's status? Who's still with us?" "4 ships, barely operational," Mira replied. "And no reinforcements yet. We've sent the distress call, but they won't get here in time." Vero finished grimly. A heavy silence hung in the air. It was broken by Commander Brax Tyrrell, who stepped forward, his massive frame looming over the tactical table. His expression was one of simmering anger. "This wasn't just a random attack," Brax said, his voice low and gravelly. "The Kryzeth were waiting for us. That fleet wasn't a patrol. It was an ambush." Vero nodded. "Agreed. They knew exactly where to hit us and how to hit us hard. Which means we've got a leak, Brax growled, his fists clenched at his sides. Someone tipped them off. Mira looked up sharply. You think someone in the fleet betrayed us? It's a possibility we can't ignore, Vero said, his tone measured. But right now, we have bigger problems. We need reinforcements, and we need them now. The holographic display flickered, showing the nearby colonies. Vero's eyes fixed on New Erythrea, the largest human settlement in the sector. If the Kryzeth reach New Erythrea, they'll wipe out millions of civilians, he said. We're the only line of defense they've got. Mira leaned over her console, typing rapidly. The Kryzeth fleet is regrouping here. She highlighted a sector near a dense asteroid field. If we strike now, we might slow them down, but we'll need every ship we can get. Vero turned to Brax. What's the status of Admiral Harlow? Brax's jaw tightened. She's alive! Took her flagship, the Indomitable, to a fallback position after the first wave. Last I heard, she was advocating for a full retreat. Retreat? Mira snapped. She's abandoning the colonies. She's being practical, Brax countered, though his tone lacked conviction. She's being a coward, Vero said, his voice icy. Patch me through to Harlow. Now. The comms screen crackled to life, revealing Admiral Harlow's stern face. Her dark eyes locked onto Vero, her expression a mix of irritation and weariness. Captain Vero, she said curtly, I hope you have good news. I don't, Vero replied. The Kryzeth are regrouping. We need reinforcements immediately, or New Erythrea will fall. Harlow's lips thinned. The fleet is in no shape for another engagement. I've ordered a strategic withdrawal. Our survival depends on preserving what's left of our forces. Survival? Vero said, his voice rising. If we let the Kryzeth take New Erythrea, we're handing them the keys to the sector. They'll use it as a staging ground to wipe out every human colony in their path. Harlow's expression hardened. And if we throw everything we have at them now, we'll lose what little remains of our fleet. Then we make them bleed for every inch. Vero shot back. If we don't fight now, there won't be anything left to save. The silence stretched, heavy with tension. Finally, Harlow sighed. I'll send what ships I can spare, she said reluctantly. But understand this, Vero. If this gambit fails, the blood is on your hands. It already is, Vero replied coldly. As the transmission ended, Vero turned to his crew. Mira, start plotting an ambush route through the asteroid field, he ordered. Brax, get our remaining ships combat ready. We're not retreating. Not yet. The crew snapped into action, their exhaustion momentarily forgotten. Vero stared at the holographic display, his mind racing. Captain, Mira said softly, what if this isn't just a battle? What if the Kryzeth are planning something bigger? Vero's eyes narrowed. Then we make sure they don't live to finish it. In the back of his mind, though, a darker thought lingered. If there truly was a traitor among them, the Kryzeth's plans might already be in motion. The Dauntless drifted near the edge of a dense asteroid belt, its scorched hull barely holding against the wear of space. The remaining human ships, battered and limping, clustered close like wounded animals seeking shelter. The hum of the ship's systems was subdued, as though the vessel itself shared in the despair of its crew. On the bridge, the atmosphere was heavy. Captain Vero stood at the tactical display, his sharp eyes scanning the hologram of the asteroid field. He tapped the console, bringing up a faint heat signature at its center. That's the Kryzeth supply convoy, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Energy readings suggest fuel and munitions. If we take it out, we slow their advance, maybe buy enough time for reinforcements to arrive. Lieutenant Mira Saren frowned, her brow furrowed as she studied the data. It's lightly guarded, but still enough to overwhelm us if we're not careful. We've been careful, snapped Commander Brax Tyrell. He slammed his fist onto the console, causing a technician nearby to flinch. Look where it's gotten us. Half the fleet gone, colonies burning, and civilians slaughtered while we crawl through the debris. Enough, Vero said sharply. We don't have the luxury of despair. If we hit that convoy, we give humanity a fighting chance. If we don't, we're finished. Mira turned to him, her expression softening. What's the plan, Captain? Vero tapped the hologram again, zooming in on the asteroid field. The Kryzeth have the advantage in open combat, but this field limits their movement. We can use the debris for cover and strike their convoy from multiple angles. A hit-and-run strategy. Quick, precise, and brutal. Brax grunted. And if they spring a trap, they've been one step ahead of us this entire war. Then we spring one of our own, Vero said, a glint of determination in his eye. We plant decoys among the asteroids, old ship hulks, debris loaded with proximity charges. We lure them in, force them to split their forces, and pick them apart. Hours later, the plan was in motion. The Dauntless and its remaining escorts crept into the asteroid field, their engines running at minimal power. The crew worked in hushed urgency, the weight of their mission hanging over them. In the mess hall, Mira found herself speaking to a group of young ensigns, their faces pale and eyes wide. Lieutenant, one of them stammered, do you think we can actually win this? Mira hesitated, then crouched to meet their gaze. I don't know, she admitted. But if we don't fight, we lose everything. Our homes, our families, everything we've ever loved. That's why we keep going. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Her words seemed to steady them, if only slightly. As she walked back to the bridge, her thoughts lingered on her own family back on New Erythrea. She hadn't heard from them in weeks. The ambush began with a flash of light as the first Kryzeth ship drifted into a minefield disguised as asteroid debris. The explosion sent ripples through the convoy, scattering the alien vessels. No! Vero barked. The Dauntless and its escorts emerged from cover, their weapons blazing. Plasma bolts streaked through the void, slamming into the Kryzeth supply ships. A hulking fuel transport exploded in a chain reaction, illuminating the battlefield in a fiery glow. Direct hit! Mira shouted. Their munitions ship is down! But the Kryzeth were quick to adapt. Their escort ships swarmed in, forcing the human vessels to retreat deeper into the field. Keep them guessing, Vero ordered. Focus fire on their engines. Slow them down. Despite the humans' ingenuity, the Kryzeth's numbers began to tell. The Stalwart, one of the remaining frigates, took a direct hit, its hull splitting apart in a silent, fiery death. Captain, we've lost the Stalwart, Brax reported grimly. Vero's knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the console. Hold the line. We're not finished yet. By the end of the skirmish, the Kryzeth convoy was in ruins. The humans had dealt a significant blow, but the cost was staggering. Another ship lost, and the survivors aboard the Dauntless were painfully aware of how little they had left to give. As the bridge fell silent once more, Vero looked at his crew, their faces etched with exhaustion and grief. We did it, Mira said softly, though her voice was tinged with bitterness. But it's not enough, is it? No, Vero admitted, but it's a start. His words hung in the air, a faint ember of hope against the overwhelming darkness. In his heart, though, he knew that humanity's fight had only just begun, and that their enemy wasn't just the Chrysath, but their own dwindling resolve. The Dauntless was eerily silent. Deep within the asteroid field, even the hum of the engines seemed muffled, as if the void itself conspired to keep their presence hidden. The bridge was a hive of controlled chaos, every officer on edge, awaiting the inevitable counterattack. Captain Elias Vero paced the command dais, his mind racing with calculations and contingencies. He glanced at Lieutenant Mira Saren, who worked furiously at her console, her lips moving silently as she muttered calculations under her breath. "Status on the Chrysath response?" Vero asked, breaking the tension. "Scouts closing in, sir," Mira replied, her voice tense. 5 cruisers and a dozen smaller vessels, closing fast. They're sweeping the field for survivors. Brax Tyrell, standing near the tactical display, growled in frustration. "They're coming to finish the job. We're down to 4 ships, and one of those is barely holding together. We're sitting ducks here." "Then we don't sit," Vero said firmly. "We make them come to us, on our terms." He pointed to a cluster of asteroids with unusually dense metallic cores. "Here, we use the field's magnetic interference to mask our positions, hide our ships in the debris, and wait until they're right on top of us." Mira looked up, a spark of hope in her eyes. "And then ambush them." "Precisely," Vero said. "But not just with our ships. We'll rig the nearby asteroids with plasma charges. When they think they have us cornered, we turn the field into a minefield." Preparations began immediately. The dauntless crew moved with precision, despite the weariness etched into their faces. Teams of engineers worked in zero gravity, carefully attaching plasma charges to the asteroids. The ships dimmed their lights, running on minimal power to avoid detection. As the operation unfolded, Vero stood at the viewport, watching the distant stars. Mira approached, hesitating before speaking. "Captain," she said softly, "do you ever think about Earth? The home we left behind?" Vero didn't turn. "Every day," he admitted. "But it's not the place I miss. It's the idea, the hope it gave us. We were united once. Now we're scattered, fighting just to survive." Mira nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think we'll ever get it back?" "We'll have to earn it," Vero said, finally turning to her. "And that starts here." The Chrysath ships appeared on the sensors like phantoms, gliding silently through the asteroid field. Their tendril-covered hulls writhed with faint bioluminescent patterns, as if alive. "Enemy fleet entering the field," Mira reported. "They're spreading out, scanning the debris." "Good," Vero said. "Let them think they've won." As the Chrysath moved deeper into the trap, the human ships lay dormant, their engines cold. The seconds dragged into minutes, every breath held as the alien vessels crept closer. Then, the lead Chrysath cruiser drifted past an asteroid marked with a glowing blue glyph. "Detonate," Vero commanded. The explosion shattered the silence, a fiery blossom of plasma tearing through the cruiser's side. Debris spiraled outward, slamming into the smaller vessels nearby. "Engage!" Vero barked. The Dauntless roared to life, its guns blazing. Plasma bolts streaked across the field, slamming into the disoriented Chrysath ships. The remaining human vessels joined in, emerging from the debris like ghosts, their precision strikes crippling the alien formation. "2 enemy frigates down!" Mira called out. "Focus fire on their lead ship." Vero ordered. Cut off their command. The Kryzeth responded with brutal efficiency. Their ships regrouped, firing beams of searing energy that carved through the asteroid field. The Resolute, one of the last remaining human frigates, took a direct hit, its hull imploding in a blinding flash. "Shield failure on the Dauntless!" Brax shouted. "We can't take another hit like that." "Divert all power to weapons," Vero said through gritted teeth. "We take them down now, or we don't leave this field." The battle was a symphony of chaos. Asteroids exploded, debris filled the void, and ships weaved through the destruction like predators locked in a deadly dance. Finally, the Kryzeth lead cruiser succumbed, its hull cracking under the relentless assault. It detonated in a brilliant explosion, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The remaining Kryzeth ships hesitated, their movements erratic. "They're retreating!" Mira exclaimed. Vero exhaled, his shoulders slumping. "Not for long," he muttered. "This was just the first wave. They'll come back stronger." The Dauntless floated amidst the wreckage, victorious but battered. Vero knew the reprieve would be short-lived. Their fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. The aftermath of the ambush left the human survivors in a tense calm, their ships drifting amidst the asteroid field like wounded predators licking their wounds. On the Dauntless, repairs were underway, but the ship's core systems groaned under the strain. Vero knew they had little time before the Kryzeth returned with overwhelming force. In the war room, a small group had gathered. Captain Vero, Lieutenant Mira Saren, Commander Brax Tyrell, and Chief Engineer Liat Reese. The holographic table displayed the surrounding sectors, but all eyes were on a faint signal that pulsed intermittently on the edge of the screen. "It's a relay beacon," Liat said, brushing a lock of grease-streaked hair from her face. "It's Kryzeth tech, but it's broadcasting on a human frequency." Vero frowned. "What kind of message?" "That's the thing," Liat replied, her voice tinged with unease. "It's encrypted in an old Earth military code, something we haven't used in decades." "That's impossible," Mira said. "The Kryzeth couldn't have cracked our old codes without help." Brax growled, slamming a fist onto the table. "The traitor! Whoever's been feeding them information!" "Or," Mira interjected, "it's a trap. The Kryzeth might be trying to lure us out." Vero studied the pulsing beacon, his mind racing. If the signal was genuine, it could mean survivors, or critical intel. If it wasn't, it could lead to their destruction. "We don't have the luxury to ignore it," he said finally. "If there's even a chance this signal is human, we have to investigate." The Dauntless and its remaining escort ships slipped out of the asteroid field, the void around them unnervingly quiet. Mira worked her console, triangulating the source of the beacon. "Signal's stronger now," she reported. "It's coming from a derelict Kryzeth battleship." Brax snorted. "A ghost ship? This just keeps getting better." As the human fleet approached, the outline of the Kryzeth vessel emerged. It was massive, its hull dark and cracked as if abandoned after a battle. Its bioluminescent tendrils were dim, the eerie glow flickering like dying embers. "Scan the ship," Vero ordered. "No life signs," Mira said after a moment. "Power levels are minimal, but the beacon is definitely coming from inside." "Prepare a boarding team," Vero said. "Brax, you're with me. Mira, you have the bridge." The boarding shuttle docked with the derelict, the hiss of decompression echoing ominously in the tight confines. Vero, Brax, and a squad of Marines entered the alien vessel. their boots clanging against the metallic floor. The interior was a labyrinth of organic and mechanical structures, pulsating faintly like a dying heart. "This place gives me the creeps," one Marine muttered. "Stay sharp," Brax growled. They followed the signal deeper into the ship, passing rooms filled with Chrysith corpses frozen in grotesque poses. It was as if something had killed them from the inside. "This wasn't a battle," Vero said, his voice low. "Something else happened here." They reached the source of the signal, a small chamber lined with alien technology. In the center, a human data terminal glowed faintly, its screen displaying the Earth military insignia. "It's real," Brax said, his voice tinged with disbelief. Vero approached cautiously and inserted a data spike. The terminal buzzed to life, displaying a fragmented message. "This is General Axton Rourke, Chrysith Homeworld, Weapon, End the War, Trust no one." Before they could react, the terminal sparked violently, and the ship shuddered as if waking from a long slumber. "Captain!" Mira's voice crackled over the comm. "The Chrysith ship is powering up. We're detecting energy surges across its systems." "Get us out of here!" Vero shouted. The team sprinted back toward the docking bay as the derelict came alive. Walls glowed with bioluminescent patterns, and tendrils of energy lashed out, cutting down 2 Marines before they could react. "Move! Move!" Brax bellowed, firing his rifle at the encroaching tendrils. The shuttle bay was a chaotic mess as the dauntless team scrambled aboard. The shuttle launched just as the Chrysith vessel's energy signature spiked. Behind them, the ghost ship erupted in a pulse of green energy that sent shockwaves rippling through space. Back aboard the Dauntless, Vero sat in the war room, staring at the fragmented message. "A Chrysith homeworld?" Mira said, leaning over the table. "And a weapon that can end the war? Do you think it's real?" "It has to be," Vero said. "If there's even a chance, we need to find it. But Rourke's warning was clear. There's a traitor among us." The room fell silent, the weight of their predicament sinking in. As the Dauntless prepared for its next move, Vero couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was leading them to something far more dangerous than the Chrysith fleet, a truth that could destroy them all. The bridge of the Dauntless buzzed with activity. Screens glowed dimly, tactical projections flickering as the crew worked to piece together a plan. Captain Vero stood at the center of the chaos, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression set like steel. Around him, the remnants of humanity's last fleet prepared for an impossible task, retaking what the Chrysith had stolen. Mira Saren leaned over her console, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Captain, I've mapped out the surrounding sectors based on Rourke's data. The Chrysith are maintaining supply chains through a central hub, a station in the Telor Nebula. If we can cut that off, we cripple their ability to push deeper into our territory." Commander Brax Tyrell stepped forward, a skeptical scowl on his face. "We don't have the firepower for a direct assault on a station like that. Their defenses alone would shred us before we got close." "We won't attack directly," Vero said, his voice calm but firm. He tapped the hologram on the tactical table, zooming in on the station. "The Chrysith rely on overwhelming force, but their strength is also their weakness. They assume we won't risk high-stakes maneuvers. That's exactly why we'll exploit their blind spot." Mira nodded, catching on. "A surgical strike. Slip into the nebula under cover of its radiation pockets, sabotage their defense systems, and hit their main reactor." "Exactly," Vero said. "We don't need to destroy the station completely.
Just cause enough chaos to force them to reroute resources to secure it.
That buys us time to regroup and push back. Brax crossed his arms. And what about the fleet guarding the station? Even if we sneak in, they'll notice the second we make our move. Vero smiled faintly.
That's where the decoys come in.
He tapped the map again, highlighting several nearby asteroid fields. We deploy drone ships and debris clusters rigged with false energy signatures. The Kryzith will think it's an attack on a different sector and divert their forces. By the time they realize the real target, it'll be too late. Hours later, in the Dauntless hangar bay, engineers worked tirelessly to retrofit drones with modified signal emitters. Mira stood near one of the drones, inspecting its setup. "Do you really think this will work?" she asked, her voice low. Vero approached, his gaze steady. "It has to. The Kryzith think we're broken, scattered. They won't expect a coordinated strike like this." She hesitated before looking up at him. "And if we fail?"
"Then we take as many of them with us as we can," he said simply.
The fleet slipped into the Telor Nebula like ghosts. The surrounding gas clouds shimmered with eerie hues of green and blue, their radiation distorting sensors and comms. The tension aboard the Dauntless was palpable, every crew member hyper-aware of the stakes. "Decoys deployed," Mira reported. "They're broadcasting as planned. Kryzith patrols are diverting to the outer sectors." Vero nodded. "Good. Begin approach to the station. Slow and steady. We can't risk detection." The Kryzith station loomed ahead, a vast structure bristling with weaponry and tendrils of bioluminescent energy. Its central core pulsed faintly, a heartbeat of alien power.
"Radiation is masking our approach," Brax said, his tone grudgingly impressed. "They don't see us, yet." "Engineering, are the boarding teams ready?" Vero asked. Chief Engineer Liat Reese's voice crackled over the comms. "All set. We'll disable the station's weapons grid the second we're in." "Good," Vero said. "Let's make this count." The human fleet moved into position, their ships hugging the cover of dense radiation pockets. The first boarding pods launched, streaking toward the station like silent missiles. As the pods latched onto the station's hull, Mira's voice broke the silence. "Captain, Kryzith patrols are returning. They're scanning the area. Looks like they're catching on." "Move faster," Vero ordered. "Boarding teams, what's your status?" Inside the station, human Marines fought their way through narrow corridors of alien design. Gunfire and plasma bursts lit up the darkness, their echoes swallowed by the station's humming machinery. "We've reached the main reactor," one Marine reported. "Planting charges now." The bridge shook violently as the Dauntless took a hit. "Enemy ships incoming!" Brax shouted. "They've found us." "Hold position," Vero commanded. "We need that reactor offline, or none of us make it out." The station erupted in chaos as the reactor exploded, sending shockwaves rippling through the nebula. The human fleet fired at retreating Kryzeth ships, using the confusion to slip back into the cover of the gas clouds. Vero's knuckles were white as he gripped the console. "Status?" "The station is crippled," Mira said, her voice shaking but triumphant. "We did it!" The crew cheered, but Vero's gaze remained fixed on the tactical display. He knew the battle was far from over, and the war was drawing them closer to a final, deadly confrontation. The Dauntless drifted in the shadows of a dying star, its battered hull illuminated by the faint red glow of the collapsing celestial body. Inside, the air was heavy with tension. The crew moved with quiet efficiency,
but their eyes betrayed their fear. They all knew what lay ahead, the final push, the desperate gamble to destroy the Chrysith at their core. Captain Vero stood at the center of the war room, the holographic table casting pale light over his weathered face. Around him, his key officers gathered, Lieutenant Mira Saren, Commander Brax Tyrell, and Chief Engineer Liat Reese. Their faces mirrored the mood aboard the ship, weary but determined. Mira broke the silence, her voice steady but laced with unease. The Chrysith homeworld is heavily fortified, orbital defenses, fleets stationed at every approach. The data we recovered confirms it's their command nexus. If we take it out, we cut the head off the snake.
Assuming we get close enough to do anything,
Brax grumbled, arms crossed.
Their sensors will spot us light years out, and their fleets will tear us apart before we even see the surface. Vero's gaze didn't waver. We don't fight their fleets. We distract them, just like at the station. The Chrysith rely on centralized control, and their leaders won't abandon the homeworld lightly. If we make them think Earth's fleet is mounting a full-scale assault elsewhere, we'll force them to split their forces.
And while their fleets are chasing ghosts? Mira asked, leaning forward.
We'll strike at the core,
Vero said. He tapped the holographic map, zooming in on a planet cloaked in swirling green clouds. Their primary reactor is planetary. If we detonate it, it'll take out their command structure and their orbital defenses. They'll be crippled.
Liat frowned, her voice hesitant. That much energy. It'll turn the entire planet into a fireball. Anything within the atmosphere will be annihilated, including us.
A heavy silence fell over the room. The gravity of the mission settled like a weight on their shoulders. Later, on the bridge, Vero stood at the viewport, watching the dying star flicker.
Mira approached, her steps hesitant. You don't think we'll come back from this, do you? She asked quietly.
Vero didn't look away from the stars.
Hope is a luxury we can't afford, Lieutenant. But I do know this. If we succeed, humanity has a chance. If we fail, there's nothing left. Mira nodded, her jaw tightening. You're not scared, are you? Vero finally turned to her, his expression softer than she'd ever seen. Of course I'm scared. Only fools and machines aren't. But fear isn't what defines us. It's what we do with it.
The crew gathered in the hangar for final preparations. Marines checked their weapons, engineers loaded the last of the charges, and pilots reviewed attack vectors. The hum of activity was tinged with an unspoken understanding. This was likely their last mission. Brax stood with a group of soldiers, his voice booming as he barked orders. "Check your gear twice! You get one chance to make it count!" Nearby, Liat adjusted the settings on a plasma charge. She muttered to herself, but when a young engineer hesitated, she looked up and offered a rare smile. "Don't overthink it, kid. Just stick to the plan." Vero addressed the crew from the central platform. His voice carried over the noise, steady and commanding. "You've all fought harder than anyone could ask. Today we take that fight to the heart of the enemy. Some of us won't make it back, but know this. Every one of you is a part of something greater, something worth dying for. Humanity will remember." The crew erupted in cheers, the sound a fragile veneer over their fear. As the fleet powered up, slipping into the Chrysith system under the cover of decoy signals, Vero stood on the bridge. His hands gripped the railing as the planet loomed ahead, its swirling clouds glowing with alien energy. Mira's voice broke the silence. "All ships in position. Decoys are working. Enemy fleets are splitting." "Good," Vero said. His voice was calm, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the rail tighter. "Take us in." The Dauntless surged forward, flanked by the remnants of humanity's fleet. Each ship carried a part of the plan, a piece of the final gambit. Fear hung in the air like a storm cloud, but beneath it burned something stronger: determination. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched. But they were human, and they would fight to the last breath. The Kryzeth homeworld loomed in the distance, a pulsating green orb shrouded in swirling clouds and protected by a lattice of orbital defenses. Humanity's fleet, tattered but unbroken, surged forward, braving the full fury of the Kryzeth's last stand. Ships exploded in fiery bursts as alien weapons ripped through their hulls, but the humans pressed on. This was their moment, the culmination of all their sacrifices, all their pain. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Captain Vero stood unyielding. "Keep our course steady," he commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We're taking this all the way." Commander Brax Tyrrell gritted his teeth as another blast rocked the ship. "Shields are down to 15%. We're not going to last much longer." "Then we make every second count," Vero replied. "Mira, status on the boarding teams?" Lieutenant Mira Saren's voice was tense but determined. "They've breached the reactor perimeter. Liat is working on the charges now. They need another 5 minutes. "We'll give them 5 minutes," Vero said. His gaze swept the bridge, meeting the eyes of his crew. "We've come too far to fail now." On the surface, the battle was a brutal melee of plasma bolts and human grit. Marines fought like cornered wolves, their desperation turning to ferocity as they carved a path toward the planetary reactor. Chief Engineer Liat Reese crouched beside a control panel, sweat streaming down her face as she connected the detonation charges. "Hurry it up, Liat!" a Marine shouted, firing at advancing Kryzeth soldiers. "Do you want this done right or fast?" Liat snapped back, her fingers moving with surgical precision. "One more connection and there." She activated the charge timer and turned to the team. "We're set. Let's move." Above the planet, the Dauntless held the line, its guns blazing as it intercepted Kryzeth fighters. The ship shuddered under a relentless barrage, but Vero's voice remained steady. "All ships, focus fire on the enemy flagship. Draw their attention away from the surface." Mira's hands flew across her console. "They're converging on us. Captain, if they focus all fire—" "They won't," Vero interrupted. "They still think we're after their fleet. They don't know this is about the reactor. We just need to hold them here." As the Kryzeth flagship turned its weapons on the Dauntless, Vero gripped the rail. "Brace for impact. This is it." The blast hit with the force of a collapsing star. Consoles exploded and the bridge filled with smoke. Vero pulled himself upright, coughing but unshaken. "Damage report!" "Main engines are gone," Brax shouted. "We're dead in the water." "Then we'll make this our shield," Vero said, his voice fierce. "Redirect power to forward guns. If this is where we die fighting." On the planet, the charges detonated. The reactor erupted in a cataclysmic explosion, a blinding light that consumed the Kryzeth capital and sent shockwaves rippling through the atmosphere. Above, the Kryzeth fleet faltered as their command network collapsed. Ships drifted aimlessly, their coordination shattered. Mira's voice broke through the chaos. "Captain, the reactor is gone! We've done it!" Vero allowed himself a small smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "All ships, fall back. Regroup at the rendezvous point." "Captain, what about the Dauntless?" Mira asked, her voice trembling. "We'll hold the line," Vero said simply.
Humanity needs you to survive. Go. As the fleet retreated, the Dauntless turned its remaining guns on the Kryzeth flagship. Alone and battered, it fought until its last moments, taking the enemy's mightiest ship down with it. The Kryzeth Empire collapsed in the wake of their homeworld's destruction. Leaderless and scattered, their fleets were hunted down or fled into the void. Humanity, bloodied but victorious, reclaimed their lost worlds and rebuilt. Statues of Captain Varro and the Dauntless crew were erected in every major city, their faces carved into eternal reminders of courage and sacrifice. Schools taught their story as legend, the moment when humanity, against all odds, rose from the ashes and reclaimed the stars. Mira Saren, who survived to command the rebuilt fleet, often spoke of Varro's final words: "We are more than flesh and blood. We are the fire that shapes the cosmos." For the Kryzeth, the defeat was incomprehensible. A species built on dominance could not fathom how the humans, so broken and outnumbered, had triumphed. Those who survived scattered to distant galaxies, their bioluminescent tendrils dimmed with shame and fear. "They were not like us," one Kryzeth elder said to its brood, recounting the war. "They fought not for conquest, but for survival, for something greater than themselves, and that made them unstoppable." Centuries later, humanity thrived. The lost worlds flourished once more, and humanity's reach extended further than ever before. In the heart of the Terran capital, a monument stood, a towering statue of Captain Varro, his face turned to the heavens. Below him, engraved in steel, were the words that defined humanity's victory. "They thought they could extinguish our light, but humanity is the fire that will never die."